Assalamu alaikum everyone. So this is our first online class in healthcare management. Today we are going to be doing the chapter number 6, responsibilities for policies and procedures. We'll see a few learning objectives of this chapter. Firstly, determine the purpose of policies and procedures and distinguish between them. Identify managerial actions that increase the value of policies and procedures. Compare policies and procedures with other documents used by healthcare organizations. Prepare a policy procedure using a given guideline and discuss the responsibility of managers for policies and procedures. I've highlighted the content that we will be doing. First of all, usefulness of policies and procedures. A policies and procedures manual is important to even the simplest organization. Regardless of size, there are several good reasons to develop and implement policies and procedures. Firstly, to avoid the potential trap of relying on memory to assure consistency in conducting business over a period of time. When there is some format available or some method, technique available to perform some functions, then it is more likely that the outcomes of your work are going to be productive. Secondly, to demonstrate the thoughtful, thorough attention to business details for all stakeholders. To serve as evidence during legal proceedings. Note, wording that suggests absolutes such as always should be avoided. Use typically or usually instead. So, in case if there is some case against the organization or the healthcare manager, the policies and procedures can be used to protect the benefit of the organization. The fourth point is to meet the requirements of licensing or other agencies that may demand them. Most of the licensing organizations and agencies with which healthcare managers are attached to require that they have a policy and procedure manual to reflect the compliance of an organization's commitment to state and federal laws. The table of contents of any healthcare organization's policy and procedures include charges for patients' cancellations and no-shows. So it has a policy for if there are any cancellations and people do not show up for their treatment. Recognition and reporting of abuse. Abuse can be to the patient, abuse can be regarding misuse of furniture and appliances in the hospital, use of patient restraints, interpreter and translation services, medical device safety, how to use different machinery and products, patient and family education, policies regarding that, universal precautions, health safety measures, verbal and telephone orders, basic principles of policies and procedures. A policy and procedures manual has value only if it is used. Access to the manual is the first important criterion. So if there's a policy or a procedure manual and nobody is using it, so it is of no use. A cumbersome or difficult manual that serves only as a space taker on a manager's bookshelf will be of no value if it is opened only when a compulsory review of it must be done. So a policy or a procedure is only useful when it's implemented and it is used to perform routine tasks and one uses it to have guidance. An online version of a manual in which employees may search for terms increases its usability and implementation. It Also reinforces the use of standardized formats as they are developed. To be more functional, the policies and procedures manual for any healthcare organization must be current and relevant to contemporary work. Means that it needs to be up to date and related to the work. Exclude clinical guidelines and protocols. So there is no need to add clinical guidelines and clinical protocols in the policy and procedure manual. Exclude entries that are simply information sharing. Be consistent in format, worded as do's rather than do nots. Emphasize expectations rather than what is unacceptable. So these 2 points means that they need to be written in a positive tone rather than in a negative tone and something that means negating or constraining. Be accessible and easily retrievable for anybody to use. Include a complete history of changes made to the document. Include guidelines for writing, revising, and reviewing the manual. Deleting outdated policies and procedures is probably as important as writing new ones, particularly for the healthcare organization that struggle to keep up with ongoing changes in technology, employees, and organizational structures. Not only do managers want everyone to be on the same page, but also it is critical that the page they are on is the right page. So it is very important that the manual is kept updated and is used for the benefit of the organization. Acceptance of a policy and procedure. To manage policies and procedure is the critical first step. So if it needs to be accepted by the people who developed it and onto whom it will be implemented. Fortunately, computer software programs and other resources have made the development, review, revision, and tracking of changes in policies and procedure manuals easier and timelier. So, software has made our lives very easy. Preparing policies and procedures. Policies and procedures are more likely to be effective if they accurately describe an activity using consistent terminology to make results more uniform. They must be logical, detailed, free of spelling and grammatical errors, and understandable. There should be no gaps in the steps to ensure adherence and the desired outcome. A template or standard format for policies and procedures is valuable for improving their effectiveness. Although the layout of a policy and procedure may vary, they typically include the following section. Firstly, title and tracking number, effective date, review revision date, policy, its purpose, persons affected, it means that to whom it is applicable to, scope, background, important definitions, procedures, responsibilities, and lastly, approval signatures. This format reflects a system that combines policies and procedure in one document. Some organizations may choose to separate policies and procedures into two manuals that are cross-referenced. It means that they follow same guideline. There is a risk that people are less likely to look up the information they need in two sources because it is more difficult for readers because procedures are revised more frequently than policies. Some organizations find it easier to maintain procedures separate from the policies. First, we'll do policies, what policies are, and what type of policies there can be. First, defining it. A policy is a broad statement of an expectation that guides decisions regarding actions to be taken. So, it's a broad statement of an expectation. The general rules that govern organizational procedures are found in policies. A policy also addresses the who, what, when, and where about some components of an organization. So here are given some examples of policies in a healthcare organizations. They can be about keys and locks, who is responsible of keeping them, how he can give it to somebody else, and will be responsible for its reproduction, duplication, and keeping it back. We'll do patient scheduling in detail a little bit. So when a patient comes to you, each new patient is scheduled for an initial appointment within 48 hours of receiving a request for an outpatient physical therapy appointment. Inpatients must be seen on the same day when a referral is received before noon. If it is received after noon, then obviously they will be seen on the next day. So it can be regarding interview expenses, reimbursement of training if time or money is lost during the training, performance evaluation. Each employee undergoes performance evaluation, and the policy can be made regarding it. Who is responsible about it? Who will be doing it? It will be done after how much time, and if there are any ethical dilemmas regarding it. Another policy that we'll see a little bit, that is employee background checks. If when someone is hired, so who is going to be responsible for checking the background? Such checks provide a standard requirement and process for obtaining and evaluating background information on candidates for employment, students, volunteers, and staffing agency and contracted staff employees. This policy articulates notice of investigation and documentation requirements. Now we're going to do the procedures. A procedure describes a particular way of accomplishing an action. It is a series of steps to provide details to reach an end or to describe how to carry out a policy. Unlike policies, which tend to be more enduring, the wordiness of procedures generally allows some variation in actions that are acceptable as long as the intent and outcome of the procedures are reached. They tend to evolve more over time because of the impact of new technology and processes on tasks completed and responsibilities met. Despite this flexibility and modification, procedures are established methods for conducting the business of an organization so that it may reach its goals. Therefore, it's important that they be thoroughly and thoughtfully prepared if they are to be of value. Procedures must be presented in a way that is easy to follow, including accurate step by step tasks with user option whenever possible. So there are a few assignments over here. This I'm going to later on give you as assignments. Now let's see what other important documents are made in an organization. In addition to the policies and procedures, managers also need to become familiar with other important documents. For example, discussions with executives may include references to the organizational bylaws. What are bylaws? Are the essential legal framework of a corporation that typically addresses procedure for holding meetings, electing officers, defining the duties and powers of corporation. Shareholders or boards of directors adopt bylaws to provide detailed implementation of the articles of incorporation of their organization. So they are bylaws are the legal framework of the corporation through which meetings are held and people are selected and duties are defined and powers are given to the people. Clinical practice guidelines. So initially we said that they should not be part of the policy and the procedure. Clinical practice guidelines are usually developed by organizations and different councils are systematically developed statements based on established standards to assist in the decision making of practitioners and patients about appropriate healthcare for specific clinical conditions. So, clinical practice guidelines or protocols are developed for different diseases. So, when a patient reaches you, how you are going to assess the patient, diagnose the disease, and develop your plan of intervention and treat the patient, and later on, how you're going to uh, do the follow up and do the assessment later on, evaluate the efficacy of your treatment. Protocols are specific detailed plans for treatment regimens or scientific study. Protocols are about doing, and clinical practice guidelines are about deciding. A manager's responsibility in developing policies and procedures. Policies and procedures are about accountability for decisions at all levels of an organization. Why do we need to write down all this? We need to write down all this to assess if each and every person in the organization has followed these steps or not. We need to have everybody on the same page. We need to have our work performance consistent. Processes that are required to accomplish its goal. Managers are responsible for preparing them from the reader's point of view to assure that their implementation. It is unreasonable to expect people simply to know what to do. People need to be told what to do and how to do and to guide them and to ensure consistent work is performed. They may bring assumptions from prior work experiences that are no longer applicable, or they may be expected to perform duties that are new to them. So we have a mix of people who come to you for employment. Some might be experienced and some might not be experienced. So if there is a procedure guideline available, there will be lesser chances that poor work will be performed. There were going to be lesser chances of mistakes. There are going to be lesser chances of wastage of resources. Even experienced employees may need to be reoriented to their work as changes in the organization or technology result in the new ways of doing things or new responsibilities. So, as new machinery, equipment, new resources are available, old employees need to be told what to do and how to do. And that is why there are policies and procedures. Managers need to be policies and procedure experts. Questions often arise because of the difficulty in identifying every possible step and possibility in a procedure. They arise because the actual performance of a procedural addition or change occurs faster than it can be written or revised. So questions are going to be arising. So the managers are responsible for being ready to answer all these questions, because every time a problem arises, it is not possible that a policy is made for it or a procedure is defined for it, because workplaces, especially healthcare organizations, are dynamic, ever changing, and demand quick decision making. Questions about why a policy even exists also demand answers and actions from managers. So, people who are working underneath you or your subordinates might ask why even they even exist. Manager must see to it that any policies and procedures in question are revised. If the subordinates have any problem or query, they need to be answered, and if they have any issues regarding it, so if it is possible, they need to be revised. Questions: managers must see to it. Writing policies and procedures earlier rather than later saves times and diminishes the chances for potential errors or inconsistency in performance. So we discussed this earlier, that it reduces wastage of time, resources, and the performance is improved. Encouraging those affected by policies and procedures to participate in their review and to make recommendations for improvement is likely to be an important institutional policy that increases commitment to the manual. Managers who assign new employees to read and sign off a policies and procedure manual during the orientation process may discover that this is a meaningless exercise. So people who are joining you new, they do not even read the policies and procedures at the time of orientation or at the time of joining. It is more of a when you're updating some software, and you do not read whatever the agreement is saying, and you just say I agree and accept that. So it is not suitable that employees are given the policies and procedure manual at the time of joining. They need to be informed about it later on. An alternative approach may be to introduce questions or problems during orientation sessions or meetings and ask employees to find the relevant policy and procedure to address them. This approach also presents the ongoing opportunity to update or revise policies as questions are raised in these sessions. Particularly important are policies and procedures related to legal rights and responsibilities of employees. Because employees may rely on a policy and procedure manual when they seek legal solution to problems with their employers, or patient may seek answers in manuals when they question the care they have received. Manager also must consider the manual a potential risk management and quality assurance tool. So, in case of problems, in case of there are any problems with the patients, or if there is any, the employees have any problem with the managers, they act as a risk management. So the patient and the employer and everybody can benefit from it. If confronted with a manual during legal proceedings, a manager would not want to be caught in the awkward position of reporting that it is outdated, or that it is not really the way procedures are implemented, or that it has not been applied consistently across all employees. So, a healthcare manager needs to make sure that policies and procedure manual is updated and is followed by each and every person of the organization. When forced to choose, courts often will interpret actions by organizational personnel as representative of the organization's preferred course of action over related document policies that may not be consistent with those actions. So, in case that uh, if there is a court case, and if the court has to decide, they will be uh, viewing the actions of the personnel as more representative than the policies. So this ends the chapter over here. In the next class, I'm going to bring a policy and a procedure manual, and we are going to discuss that policy and procedure manual in the class, and we are going to critique it. So I'm closing it over here. Allah Hafiz, and I'll be uploading the other very soon. Allah Hafiz.